For over 2 decades, Lucille Ball sat atop the pinnacle of American entertainment. With her signature flame red hair, her own distinctive laugh and rubbery face for comedy, she was the icon of happiness for an entire nation of TV watchers. I Love Lucy was not just a television show, it was a social movement that revolutionized what TV could do. But beneath the genial facade and the skillfully constructed image of the clownish, lovable homemaker was a woman of unrelenting determination and cutting acumen. She was the first woman to head a major Hollywood studio, Desilu Productions, and in doing so, she held greater authority than any other female performer of her time. Friends, co-workers, and competitors alike had one thing in common. Lucille Ball possessed an incredible knack for piercing through the artificial. She could detect hypocrisy, meanness, and dishonesty a mile away, and she never forgot the faces of those she thought were guilty of it. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Privately, Lucy maintained what she long ago jokingly referred to as her black book, not of scandals or affairs, but of individuals that she could never really rely on. On that list were the names of most women, who, at least publicly, were beloved as icons. To Lucy, they weren't just difficult egos or flamboyant personalities. They were, in her own description, souls of pure frost, women who used beauty, talent, or charm to shield themselves while making havoc of the people around them. Ball grew remarkably frank about this list in her last years. She started sharing with friends, sometimes at meals, sometimes in hushed late-night talk, the real faces of 9 actresses who had scarred Hollywood. What she shared was not the rumor of a jealous competitor, but the measured opinion of a woman who had collaborated with them, put up with them, or seen the harm they caused in their wake. The first and arguably most haunting name was Joan Crawford. To the general public, Crawford was Hollywood sophistication incarnate, poised, dignified, unapproachable. When she guest starred on Here's Lucy in 1971, fans believed they were seeing 2 legends meet, a stately guest star paying homage to the queen of television. But Lucy, always insightful, peered beyond the glacial facade. Crawford came with an extensive list of demands. The studio had to be maintained exactly at 68 degrees. Her makeup crew had to replace Desilu's award-winning crew, and even the position of her chair on the set was determined by a 5-page memo. To Lucy, such conduct already smelled of insecurity, but what appalled her was how Crawford treated people who had no power. When a young wardrobe assistant gave her a dress with a slight wrinkle, Crawford went on a rampage, so vile that employees stood stock still. She referred to the girl as a useless little nothing and insisted she be fired. The young woman ran out in tears, and Lucy, a loyalist to her crews, was revolted. She later confided to friends, "I've worked with department store mannequins that had more humanity." When years later Christina Crawford's best-selling memoir, Mommy Dearest, was published, Lucy merely nodded and said, "I believe every word. I saw it in her eyes." If Crawford spoke to the cold calculation cruelty, Judy Garland's life embodied something much more poignant. Talent ravaged by self-annihilation. Lucy was impressed by the genius of Judy. She would frequently remark that Garland had a way of illuminating a stage as no one else did. But behind closed doors, she revealed to friends that she found Garland's antics unacceptable. It wasn't the addiction itself that Lucy resented. She sympathized with personal demons. It was the collateral damage that remained behind. Lucy had witnessed crews wait for hours, producers lose money, and other actors lose jobs because Garland was drunk, late, or not at all. She remembered one day when Garland came in at 2 p.m. for a shoot that began at sunrise. For half an hour, she acted with her dazzling brilliance, then announced herself too tired to go on, ruining an entire production. To Lucy, such wastage was nearly criminal. She warned a friend, "Talent doesn't give you the right to destroy other people's careers." Garland's 1969 death upset her, but in secret, she spun it as an object lesson. A reminder that brilliance without discipline is a tragedy for all concerned, not merely for the star. And then there was Zsa Zsa Gabor, the so-called phony elegance on two legs dismissed by Lucy. Gabor, with her thick accent, glittering jewelry, and a seemingly endless supply of one-liners regarding her numerous husbands, was a darling of talk shows everywhere. Yet Lucy, who held nothing more precious than authenticity, perceived nothing but charlatanry. She remembered seeing Gabor show up to a charity function covered in diamonds, fawning for the photographers, then snapping at volunteers and complaining vociferously the moment cameras were out. To Lucy, this was inexcusable. She felt Gabor's behavior put women back, perpetuating the notion that women made it in Hollywood through batting eyelashes or by marrying one of them well off instead of through ability. Lucy had established her career on work ethic and comedic genius. Witnessing Gabor being lauded for fluff made her angry. Subsequent scandals, such as Gabor having slapped a police officer in Beverly Hills, only served to reinforce what Lucy suspected all along. The diva routine was not a routine, but a lifestyle. If Gabor's insincerity upset Lucy, Bette Davis's heartlessness unsettled her. Lucy admired Davis's acting. She once told Davis she could melt celluloid with her stare, but the admiration stopped at the studio gate. Lucy observed Davis belittle waiters at dinner parties, humiliate young actresses on the set, and shred colleagues with the cutting edge of her tongue. One time, Lucy heard Davis dissecting a young actress who had flubbed her line, ridiculing her IQ in front of the entire crew. For Lucy, such an attitude was a betrayal of greatness. She felt those at the top were meant to defend, not destroy. She was tolerant of eccentricity, but cruelty was her red line. When you get to the top, she had once said, you have a duty to be better, not worse. She admired Davis's ability to the end, but kept her at arm's length, citing simply, I don't keep company with those who take pleasure in hurting other people. Powerhouse actress Barbara Stanwyck embodied another sort of darkness for Lucy, emotional absence. Stanwyck was admired for her professionalism and iron discipline, but to Lucy, she seemed hollow. Lucy recalled working briefly with Stanwyck and coming away chilled, describing her as a statue you'd never dare touch. What disturbed Lucy most was Stanwyck's estrangement from her adopted son, Dion. As a mother who struggled to preserve her own family despite divorce and scandal, Lucy could not imagine discarding a child. She once explained to a friend, whatever problems you have, they're still your kids. Walking away isn't an option. To her, Stanwyck's chilly professionalism hid something much more disturbing, an absence of human warmth that even extended to family. Where Stanwyck was the ice queen, Tallulah Bankhead was the hurricane. Scandalous, extravagant, and usually drunk, Bankhead reduced her guest spot on the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour to anarchy. She forgot her lines, improvised off-color jokes too raunchy for television, and once nearly knocked over a camera in a drunken stagger. Lucy, insisting on professionalism at all times, was appalled. Then she warned Desi Arnaz, never again. To Lucy, Bankhead was a sort of self-destructive indulgence that risked not only reputations but careers. As Bankhead's behavior entertained the gossip pages, Lucy witnessed the frazzled crew, the busted budgets, the actors fighting to salvage scenes. To her, Tallulah was not a crazy eccentric, she was a menace to all around her. Shelley Winters, on the other hand, was less of a hurricane than a storm cloud, volatile and unpredictable. Lucy called her a storm in a dress. Winters had the potential for great performances, but also for sudden bursts of rage that terrified co-stars. In one benefit, Lucy witnessed Winters shout at organizers, tossed a drink, and made such a spectacle that guests exited. At Desilu, Lucy had seen Winters pour a cocktail over an executive for daring to propose a script change. Such tantrums weren't uncontrollable to Lucy, but deliberate, a method of bullying others into submission. She hated manipulation of all kinds, and she kept Winters in her sights at arm's length, always on guard against her volatile anger. And then there was Ava Gardner, the very embodiment of Hollywood loveliness, and, in Lucy's opinion, of Hollywood heartlessness. To the world, Gardner was exotic and enigmatic, To Lucy, she was brutal. Lucy had seen Gardner humiliate assistants, humiliating them in public with stinging put-downs. She had seen Gardner reduce a wardrobe girl to tears for oversteaming a dress. What really brought Lucy's blood pressure soaring was listening to Gardner call her a washed-up clown at an industry party. Lucy was not hurt by the insult. She was revolted by the offhand cruelty. She frequently exclaimed, "Ava doesn't just burn bridges, she dances on the ashes." To Lucy, Gardner was evidence of how Hollywood allowed gorgeous women to do whatever they pleased, however cold-hearted, because the industry idolized their beauty. The last name on Lucy's list stunned many. Vivian Vance, her own favorite co-star, the actress who played Ethel Mertz. To viewers, Lucy and Ethel's friendship was the nicest, most long-lasting one to be seen on television. But offstage during the early years, their friendship was filled with jealousy and resentment. Lucy demanded that Vance be kept heavier than she was on camera for fear of looking too glamorous otherwise. Vance resented the insistence and once burst into Lucy's dressing room, accusing her of jealousy and control. Their arguments were bitter, personal, and biting. And yet, in contrast to the others, this relationship changed. With time, respect developed, and by the 1970s, Lucy and Vivian were close friends. Vivian remained by Lucy throughout her divorce, and Lucy was heartbroken by the death of Vivian in 1979. The scars never faded, but the connection survived, demonstrating that not all feuds conclude in venom.